Hello, all of my history-loving friends. My name is Madam Morbid, and I am here in Grapevine, Texas, to show you a memorial built for crew members, passengers, pilots who died in the hijacked airplanes. This was created by American Airlines hostess Catherine Thompson, and her husband is the artist. His name is Dean, and so together they created this magnificent memorial. Today I'm going to tell you the story of some unsung heroes, the pilots and crew of the 4 hijacked airplanes. They were the first attacked, and they were the first to resist. To do these stories justice, I am going to cover each flight individually. Today we are starting with Flight 11. The first plane attacked, and a lot of what we know about the hijackings is because of flight attendants on Flight 11. It left Logan Airport at 8 a.m. The flight from Boston to Los Angeles that morning was at 58% capacity. There were 81 passengers from all walks of life. The youngest was 20-year-old Candace Lee Williams from Danbury, Connecticut, and the oldest was 85-year-old Robert Grant Norton from Lubbock, Maine. He was the oldest person to die. Some more well-known people on board Flight 11 included Barry Berenson, the widow of Anthony Perkins. She was 54 years old. Daniel Lee, road crew for the Backstreet Boys. He was headed to LA for the birth of his second child. His daughter would be born 2 days after his death, and would also be the first child born to a father who died that day. The creator of Frasier, David Angle, and his wife Lynn were on their way to attend the Emmy Awards. He was 54 and she was 51. Some famous people who were almost on board include Mark Wahlberg. He canceled his ticket the night before. Also, Seth MacFarlane, the creator of Family Guy, would have been on board if he hadn't been late that day and missed the plane. The pilot of Flight 11 was John Ogonowski. He was 52 years old, was an Air Force veteran. He was an Air Force Reserve member. He had flown C-141 transports at the end of the Vietnam War. He had 3 daughters, the oldest of which was 16. And in addition to being a pilot, he was a full-time farmer. He grew hay, blueberries, peaches. His daughter said of him in a 2021 interview for WBUR, a local news outfit from his hometown. She said, "He was a farmer at heart. I think he loved flying planes, but in his heart and his soul, he was a farmer." First Officer Tom McGinnis had flown F-14 Tomcats for the Navy for 12 years before becoming a pilot for American Airlines, and he had been with American for 12 years. He was 42 years old. He had lived most of his life in California and had only recently moved to New Hampshire to have better opportunities to advance with American Airlines. He had 2 children, the oldest of which was 16 years old. A family friend of his from California said, "I know it's a cliche to say the deceased are wonderful, but he was everything. He was gorgeous. He was a great dad, really sweet, funny and witty. He was all in all a great American. He loved his country and loved his family." The flight crew that day was made up of Barbara Arestway, a 13-year veteran flight attendant, Jeffrey Coleman, Sarah Lowe, Karen Martin, Kathleen Nicosia. She had 32 years with American Airlines. Betty Ong, Jean Roger, who was only 24 years old and had volunteered to work the flight that day. Diane Snyder was a 19-year American Airlines veteran flight attendant, and Madeline Sweeney had worked for American for 12 years and was picking up an extra shift that day. The hijackers were all sitting in first class, where they had a great view of the cockpit and easy access to storm the cockpit and get in. Here you hear the last normal communication between air traffic control and Flight 11. After completing this turn, air traffic control can no longer contact Flight 11.
American 11, turn 20 degrees, right?
20 right, American 11.
American 11, climb maintain level 350. American 11, climb maintain level 350. American 11, Boston. Air 7, Mike Lima, how do you hear?
Mike Lima, had you loud and clear.
American 11, Boston. American 11, the American on the frequency, how do you hear me?
This is Adam.
This is Boston. I turned American 20 left and I was going to climb. He will not respond to me now.
Looks like he's turning right.
Yeah, I turned him 20 right.
Oh, okay.
And he's only going to, I think, 29.
Okay.
Left.
Sure, that's fine.
But
You
I'm
want
not
to answer
talking to
yet.
him.
Here's Nardo. Roger.
Right.
Thanks.
It is believed around 8:14, the hijackers made their move. The first people they attacked were two flight attendants, Karen Martin and Barbara Arestque. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Sandwiched in between hijackers in front of him and behind him was a passenger named Daniel Lewin. He had served 4 years in the special forces in the Israeli army. And it's possible he tried to take action against the hijackers in front of him and did not know there were hijackers behind him as well. Lewin was attacked from behind. He is said to have had his throat cut and that he died from the attack. Karen was hurt very badly and was put on oxygen. Barbara was reported to have been stable. It's not known exactly how they got into the cockpit, but it's likely they took a cockpit key from one of the flight attendants they attacked. Or perhaps the pilots were lured out by the sound of the commotion. Either way, they got into the cockpit and likely killed the pilots. The first call from a flight attendant to report the hijacking came through in North Carolina around 8:20. Flight attendant Betty Ong was able to call American Airlines. It took her several tries. She used an airphone and eventually ended up calling the reservation desk. The first person to speak with Betty was Vanessa Minter. She was a reservations agent at the Raleigh-Durham American Airlines Center. Betty didn't even give her name. She just started talking. She said, "I think we're being hijacked." She let Vanessa know immediately that they were in the cockpit, that they couldn't get into first class anymore. And Vanessa, for her part, stayed really calm. She believed Betty right away. She connected her with her superiors right away. And when it was all said and done, Vanessa said, and this is a quote, "For the small and short time I had to deal with her, she was an amazing person. I don't even know that I could have done what she did. To me, she was the front line. That was the first information we had on what was going on." A few weeks later, Vanessa wrote a letter to Betty's family, praising her, giving them her condolences, and to this day, Betty's brother Harry still has that letter. And he said of his sister that, quote, "Her first duty is for the passengers and for the plane. She didn't call us because her first responsibility as a flight attendant that day was to help the plane and the passengers, and that's why she made that call." Betty eventually was connected to the American Airlines Operations Center. This part of her conversation was recorded. It lasts 4 minutes, and she's able to report some really important information. And she would remain on the phone with people for 28 minutes up until the flight struck the tower.
Listening in the back, the cockpit's not answering. Somebody's stabbed in business class. And I think there's mates that we can't breathe. I don't know. I think we're getting hijacked. We just left Boston. We're up in the air. We're supposed to go to LA, and the cockpit's not answering their phone.
What is your name?
Okay, my name is Betty Ong. I'm number 3 on Flight 11.
Okay.
and the cockpit is not answering their phone. And there's somebody stabbed in business class, and we can't breathe in business class. Somebody's got mace or something.
Can you describe the person that you said someone is what in business class?
I'm sitting in the back. Somebody's coming back from business. If you can hold on for 1 second, they're coming back. I want to know who thinks stabbed who, you know? I don't know, but Karen did. We got stabbed. Okay. Our number one got stabbed. Our person is stabbed. Nobody knows who stabbed who, and we can't even get up to business class right now because nobody can breathe. Can anybody get up to the cockpit? Can anybody get up to the cockpit? Okay, we can't even get into the cockpit. We don't know who's up there.
Well, if they were shrewd, they would keep the door closed and...
I'm sorry?
Would they not maintain a sterile cockpit?
I think the guys are up there. They might have jammed their way up there or something. Nobody can call the cockpit. We can't even get inside. Somebody's calling medical, and we can't get up.
American Airlines emergency line. Please state your emergency.
Hey, this is Nitty at American Airlines calling. I am monitoring a call in which Flight 11, the flight attendant is advising our reps that the pilot, everyone's been stabbed.
Okay, who's this I'm talking to?
Excuse me, this is Nitty at American Airlines at the Raleigh Reservation Center. I'm the operations specialist on duty. That's the flight attendant on the line with one of our agents.
Okay.
I can go in on the line and ask the flight attendant questions. Okay, I'm still on with security, okay, Betty? You're doing a great job. Just stay calm, okay?
Anything else from this flight attendant?
So far what I've got, the number 5 flight attendant's been stabbed, but she seems to be breathing. The number 1 seems to be stabbed pretty badly, and she's lying down on the floor. They don't know whether she's conscious or not. The other flight attendants are in the back, and that's as far as I know. It seems like the passengers in this coach might not be aware of what's going on right now.
These 2 passengers were from first class?
Okay, hold on. Hey, Betty? Do you know any information as far as the gentlemen that are in the cockpit with the pilots? Were they from first class? They were sitting in 2A and B.
Soon after taking control of the cockpit, the hijackers turned off the plane's transponder. What this meant was they could still see the location of Flight 11 on the main radar, but they had no idea what the plane's altitude was. Meanwhile, as American is learning that they have a hijacked airplane, air traffic control is getting a pretty good idea that they have a hijacking on their hands as well. At 8:24, a strange transmission came from Flight 11. It was the hijacker trying to get in contact with the passengers on the plane. But he pressed the wrong button and instead broadcast to the outside world.
We have some planes, just stay quiet and you'll be okay. We're returning to the airport.
15 Southwest of Ono going to Hampton, climbing high.
And who's trying to call me here? American 11, are you trying to call?
Nobody move. Everything will be okay. If you try to make any move, you'll injure yourself and the airplane. Just stay quiet.
The pilot of Flight 175 also heard this transmission.
Okay, United 175, you have them at your 12 o'clock now, 10 miles.
Affirmative, we have him, he looks about 28,000.
Okay, thank you. United 175, 30 degrees to the right. I want you to keep you away from this traffic.
30 degrees to the right, United 175 heavy. New York, United 175 heavy.
United 175, go ahead.
We figured we wait to go to your center. We heard a suspicious transmission on our departure out of Boston with someone keyed the mic and said, everyone stay in your seats.
Oh, okay. I'll pass it along over here.
For a long while, the passengers in the back of the plane had no idea what was going on. They thought there was a routine medical emergency in first class. But when the plane began making very violent turns and began flying very rough and descending very, very rapidly, then people knew something more was going on. Despite this, During the calls made by the flight attendants, there is never noise of panic or screaming in the background of any kind. Everyone appears to have stayed very calm throughout the whole thing, and it was only at the very end that there was ever any sign of fear from anybody, including the flight attendants on the phone. Flight attendant Amy Sweeney also made a telephone call, and she and Betty seemed to be tag teaming, passing information back and forth. The other flight attendants also seemed to be relaying information to Amy and Betty to pass along to who they were speaking with. Amy Sweeney's call was not recorded. She was speaking with manager Michael Woodward, who she personally knew, and he took detailed notes while they were speaking. This is a reconstruction of that call. It is made from the notes Michael took. Again, this is just me imagining what this call might have been. It is, of course, this would have taken place over a 20-minute time span. This is just a highlights of information she passed along during her call.
Yes, hello? This is Amy Sweeney. Listen to me. Listen very carefully. I'm a flight attendant on Flight 11. We have been hijacked. There were 4 of them. They had knives. They have attacked a passenger. This passenger's bleeding very heavily. I think the passenger they attacked is dead. 2 of our flight attendants have been stabbed as well. 1 is hurt really bad, and we have her on oxygen. I think the other one might be okay. The men were Middle Eastern. They speak no English. I know where 3 of them were sitting, although I don't know if these seats match their tickets, but they were in 10B, 9D, and 9G. One of them showed me a device. It was black. It has yellow wires running out of it. I don't know if it's real or not. They're in the cockpit. They sprayed something to chase us away so we couldn't go back in. Near the cockpit. We don't know what's going on up there right now. We are rapidly descending. We are descending way too fast. I see water. I see buildings. I see buildings. We are flying low. We are flying very, very low. We are flying way too low. Oh my God, we are flying way too low. Oh my God!
In the background of the air traffic control recordings from that day, you can hear Michael trying to get Amy back after he loses her. Listen very carefully for him calling her name.
What's that? Boston Flight Service has another one of the flight attendants on the phone too. Boston Flight Service.
Amy?
You lost it? Yeah, okay, we lost the other one, so I really need to get on the phone with her.
Something's wrong. It's Amy Sweeney's on the phone.
Amy Sweeney?
Yeah, she's the number 9.
Okay.
And he's having trouble talking to her right now.
All right, these are the 2 that are injured. 1 and 5.
She started screaming and saying something's wrong, and now he's having trouble.
Okay.
Now he thinks he might be disconnected. Okay, we just lost connection.
At the very end, Betty is supposed to have said over and over again, "Please pray for us." She didn't say, "Please pray for me." She said, "Please pray for us." And Nydia Gonzalez assured her, we are. Through the calls they made, up until very, very toward the end, the flight attendants of Flight 11 were calm, they were professional, they were clearly working as a team, relaying information. While the public didn't know it, it seems like air traffic control knew pretty early that there was a hijacking, and after Flight 11 disappeared and the fire was reported at the World Trade Center, they made the leap pretty quickly that their hijacked liner is probably what hit the building.
You said something hit the World Trade Center or something that reports? Talking with ID, and we had a phone call that came down to us saying that they had a possible hijack out of Boston.
Okay.
And I just flipped around, and we always wanted the news. And a 737 hit the World Trade Center, and I was just curious at the same time if that was the aircraft. Last I knew, they had a primary on it, and the track was not squawking 7,500, but it was
Could be.
under duress.
Send them to New York City, still continue go.
Yes.
This is what I got.
You hear about that input?
Possible news that 737 just hit the World Trade Center. This is real world. And we're trying to confirm this. Okay, continue taking the fighters down to the New York City area, JFK area, as best as you can. Make sure that the FAA clears your route all the way through. Just do what we got to do, okay? Just press with it. It looks like this guy could have hit the World Trade Center.
Flight 11 hit the World Trade Center at 8:46 a.m., causing the deaths of 1,600 people. It was the most deadly of any of the crashes that day. That toll includes anyone in the building, as well as anyone killed when the building fell, including first responders, firefighters, police. While the people of Flight 11 could not save themselves, nor prevent what happened to their airplane, they were absolutely instrumental in speeding up the process of finding out who was responsible for the hijackings. While the seat numbers differed between the two of them, probably because they may have sat in seats different from their purchased tickets, they were still able to help people on the ground identify who had done this. You also probably noticed that Amy mentions 4 hijackers. It's theorized that the pilot, Muhammad Atta, probably remained in his seat during the takeover of the cockpit, probably to protect him from injury so he would be capable of carrying out this atrocity. For that reason, Amy may not have noticed him. Most of the families who lost loved ones on Flight 11 never received anything of their family. A few things were found, and I think these are probably things that left the site of the crash on impact. A couple of people in particular did get belongings back from their loved ones. One amazing story involves flight attendant Sarah Lowe. Sarah Lowe was from Batesville, Arkansas. She attended college at Fayetteville at the University of Arkansas, and her family received 2 rings Sarah was wearing on the same finger of her right hand. The rings were completely undamaged. Here's a photo of one of them. Her sister is holding it. Sarah bought the ring while visiting her sister Allison while she was in college in Boulder, Colorado. It's got a southwestern design on it, and she said the sisters, they would pass it back and forth. When Allison studied abroad in London for a semester, she said Sarah tucked the ring into her suitcase without her knowing it, with a note wishing her well, and then when she got home, she gave it back to Sarah, and Sarah was wearing it on that fateful day. Allison said she could not believe they got it back. She said that's just not possible. How is that possible? Again, I'm guessing that this left the crash site so that it was not essentially cremated within that area of the building. Anything within there would be nothing to find. Amy was able to make her call specifically because of Sarah Lowe. Sarah had the number of a calling card her family had purchased while she was in college memorized. Because she had this number memorized, she was able to give the number to Amy, who used it to pay for the call she made on the airphone. Her family later got it on their bill, and they said several calls were attempted that didn't go through. Another ring survived. This was for a passenger named Sonia Morales Puopolo. She was sitting in first class right across the aisle from the hijackers. Sonia was a 61-year-old retired professional ballet dancer. Her wedding ring was recovered, and given back to her family in a situation very similar to Sarah's. It was found still on her finger. It was returned to her family, and they, of course, cherish it. And anyone who had any kind of remains to bury was very lucky. And certainly to get a personal item back was very special to those families, I'm sure. Thank you so much for joining me today. Next week, we will cover Flight 175. If you are a new subscriber, welcome. I am so happy to have you here. If you haven't subscribed yet and you liked this, like this video and please subscribe. I am so excited to see this channel taking off the way it has in the last week. It's been mind-blowing. I will see you guys next time.